everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you would like, we would love for you to put in the chat just which university or what your affiliation is with your workplace. It's just very interesting to know. I am Jennifer Robinson. I will be the moderator for this ADEIL conference session. Before we begin, and on behalf of ADEIL, we would like to thank our generous sponsor, Noodle, and our host, Old Dominion University. We're thankful for their contributions to making this event possible. Sometime during Teresa's presentation, I'm going to randomly select a door prize winner. I will contact you through the chat to get your information so we can follow up. But thank you so much for joining us for the alphabet soup approach, using AI tools through a DEI lens to navigate a career path. Welcome, Dr. Teresa Leary Handy.
Thank you. It is so good to be here today. So I want to welcome you to this workshop, the Alphabet Soup approach to using AI tools through a DEI lens to navigate a career path. Before we get started, I would like to offer a land acknowledgement statement from Memphis, Tennessee. We recognize and acknowledge that we are on the historic homeland of Chickasaw Nation, of which they inhabited. Memphis and all of Tennessee, which was a long-established territory for many indigenous peoples, including the Choctaw and the Quapaw nations. Prior to their forced removal, and for some, their unforeseen extinction, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the people and histories of these lands. And this is a acknowledgement that was co-authored by the representatives from the Cultural Heritage Department and legal teams from the Chickasaw Nation and the Native Rights, a grassroots indigenous organization local to Memphis. So I first want to thank you again for joining me, and I want to share a bit about myself. My name is Teresa Leary Handy, and I'm a program chair at the University of Arizona Global Campus. And I'm excited to share some of the research work I've been doing as part of a UAGC University Fellowship Program research grant that I received this past summer. I want to share why this matters to me. I was the first Black teacher that was hired at a private all-girl school in Memphis, Tennessee. The school was founded in 1847, and I was hired in 2013. So I'm going to let that sink in for you a little bit. And then I want to share another experience that I had. At that same school where I was hired, I had to go through 4 informal interviews, 2 formal interviews, and a teaching demonstration. So when I finally got the offer from the head of school, I actually cried. And I cried because the process had been so grueling. And I also knew that it had been an unusual process. It was a very different hiring process than the one I'd had for the previous job that I was leaving, where I walked into an interview, and after 2 hours of an impromptu a lesson demonstration, I was hired with a very generous offer. So when I look at those 2 separate experiences, it really impacted me in a way that made me wonder how this looks at other areas. And as I proceeded on my career, I realized that it's not that different. So as I entered higher education a few years ago, after earning my doctorate on the lived experiences of Black female graduates at these private schools, I was intrigued to understand the lived experiences of Black women and faculty women of color in higher education, specifically online institutions. And so this past summer, I wrote the research proposal, and now this is the beginning of a process that I'm excited to share with you today. Today, I hope you will leave with a greater understanding of the lived experiences of faculty women of color. And for the purpose of this conversation, I am speaking of women who identify as both female and as belonging to a racial or ethnic minority group. I'm also asking that those listening accept the understanding that faculty women of color have a unique set of challenges, opportunities, and perspectives in higher education settings. With that being said, I hope you will learn strategies that you can use to support faculty women of color in your sphere of influence. And next, I hope you will reflect on your sphere of influence and develop 1 to 2 actionable steps to promote a more inclusive culture. And finally, I hope you will leave with a few AI tools that can help faculty women of color and you navigate a career path. And why do you ask? I focused on this because when we all work together, we all win. I want to just say also that if you have a question, Jen, I've mentioned to her that she can just jump in and ask that question if I don't see it in the chat, because I'm really focused on 2 screens surveys and all those different things. So feel free to ask a question and I will recognize it as it's coming through. So before we get started, I want to have you participate in a poll. And the question is, how comfortable are you discussing topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion? You can scan the QR code. You can do a text to 37607. You can type in my name and 763, or you can just go to that website. And I'm going to, as you are doing that, it will show up on this next screen. And so I'm going to just go ahead. I'm going to go back and kind of toggle between so that people can get the information they need to participate in the survey. Okay, so we have kind of comfortable is kind of at the, half of you all feel kind of comfortable, very comfortable. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just, so I like the fact that people are feeling very comfortable and kind of comfortable. So we do have a few people that feel not comfortable. And I hope that today your comfort level will increase, your comfort level with what you already understand will be extended a bit to understand how that connects to faculty women of color. So thank you for participating in that poll. So what I would like to do now is share how I came up with this title. I know that there are a lot of words and terms when you think about DEI, and that can be a little confusing. And I also know that it's important to have a shared language and a shared understanding. So as I began my research, I wanted to be sure that people who wanted to learn more felt comfortable and that I could help by bridging that with some innovative ways around using artificial intelligence. And that can be used to level the playing field and to support faculty who have been traditionally marginalized. And so that added even more letters to the conversation. And so that's where alphabet soup came into the picture. Speaking of AI, what do you think of this bowl of soup? This is an AI generated image that I created using Canva Magic Media. So I wanted to put in DEI, but it didn't quite work out, but AI did work out. So let's talk about those definitions a little bit. Diversity includes all the ways in which people differ, which includes not only race, ethnicity, and gender, but also age, national origin, religion, disability, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, education, marital status, language, and physical appearance. And let's not forget different ideas, perspectives, and values. Diversity tends to focus on how many of these we have in the room or at the organization. But we need to be careful that we're not just thinking that diversity programs and cultural celebrations are all that is needed. Equity means to treat everyone fairly, and equity emphasis addresses structural factors that benefit some groups, communities, and harms other groups and communities. As we think about equity in higher education, we can focus on the creation of opportunities for historically underrepresented populations that help to close the achievement gaps in student success and completion. And finally, inclusion is that intentional effort to transform the norm by creating opportunities for those who have been historically marginalized. And it begins with the needs, wants, and quality of life for the historically minoritized populations rather than the historically privileged populations. And so what does this look like? It looks like an active and intentional ongoing engagement with diversity through curriculum, co-curriculars, and in the community. It helps in which individuals might connect, and that helps to increase the awareness and empathy in a very complex way that the individuals interact with systems and institutions. And so that's where this really is important to me as a faculty woman of color, because all of this is very nuanced. It's all very complicated. And we live in a very complicated world, I think, as all of us can acknowledge today. And so here's another AI created image. So when I was talking about what does, this DEI lens, I wanted to explain what that means. Using a DEI lens means viewing and approaching situations, issues, policies through a framework of DEI. This approach looks at all dimensions of diversity that we've discussed before. It means that we are examining our policies, our practices, we're promoting the representation of underrepresented voices, we're addressing the unconscious biases, and we're ensuring access and opportunities, which is where AI tools come into play. These tools can support advocacy and allyship by leveling the playing field and supporting faculty. All of this together helps to create a more inclusive, fair, and just university culture, but also it can impact society as a whole. And because this approach allows everyone to thrive and it allows everyone to do their best. So now I want to ask another poll question, and I have to actually activate this one. So give me a second. Okay. You know, I have every window open just at the right place. Let's see. Okay, activate. Okay, it's now activated. Does your university have a faculty mentorship program for faculty women of color? So you can answer that. And if your faculty, and if your university does someone want to share what that looks like, or if you've participated in one, you want to share? No, okay. So I'm going to go back to the slide. Give everyone a chance to connect. Wow, so this may be the answer then, which is your university does not have a faculty mentorship program for women of color. So let me ask a different question that's not on my poll. Do you have a faculty mentorship program, period, at your university? And you can put that into the chat, if you will. Okay, I see a yes. Ollie, I just saw your comment. I understand. I thought about adding something like that, so thank you. Okay, really, I don't know. Sort of. I'm sure we have something for faculty, but you don't know the details. Okay, same. Great, thank you. So that is definitely an area of growth, I think, for all of us to explore whether or not we have a program that mentors faculty, what that looks like, and if there's a need to have a specialized program to help faculty who are traditionally marginalized, definitely. So let's talk about the lived experiences of faculty women of color. Faculty women of color are often underrepresented in faculty positions, particularly in senior and leadership roles. They often face biases based on both their race and gender, which can lead to feelings of isolation and lack of representation. In addition, sometimes there are assumptions made about their qualifications or teaching styles. Finally, their work environment may be riddled with microaggressions that can create a hostile and unwelcoming culture, which means the lack of mentors and role models can make it even more difficult for them to navigate academia. The idea that faculty women of color can just show up at work in their own full identity is not how many feel. Early data from my research study also supports this. And this means that there is often stress as these women work to reconcile their professional identity with their racial and cultural identity. In one of my focus groups, a participant said, "I don't think anyone really cares if she brings her whole identity to work." So whether or not this is true or not is not really for us to determine, but what matters is that is her feeling, and those feelings matter. And for some faculty women of color, they struggle with being one of a few, which can also lead to a feeling of tokenism, where they may feel like they are expected to represent an entire race or ethnic group. The presence of faculty women of color is important to the higher education landscape because they have an intersectional understanding of social issues and the compounding effects of race, gender, and other factors. Yes, there are challenges, but the reality is these women of color bring value that is often overlooked and diminished. They often bring firsthand knowledge and understanding of diverse cultures, traditions, and perspectives, which can lead to a more inclusive curriculum and a broader understanding of global issues. Their unique perspectives enrich the learning and research environment, and their presence supports a well-rounded and holistic understanding of complex societal issues. One dynamic that faculty women feel is that feeling of not belonging or a feeling of othering. Othering is a social and psychological phenomenon that where one group defines and establishes their own identity by contrasting it with a perceived other group. This process is characterized by viewing and treating members of the group as different or less worthy, and sometimes even as a threat. It's important to recognize that othering is a social construct and that distinctions made between us and them are often arbitrary and based on societal norms and historical context. Othering can have far-reaching effects on individuals and communities. Recognizing and challenging othering is a crucial step towards building more inclusive and equitable learning environments. Creating safe spaces where faculty women of color can be vulnerable and feel welcome is important. And so let's talk about ways that we can do that. Can you think in the chat, can you think of a way that you could create a more welcoming community for a faculty woman of color? Click on the chat. Can you think of ways that you can get to know them, all about them? And I'll just kind of follow with Jen. One of the ways that you can do that is setting up one-on-ones. When you're in an online environment, it's hard to develop those relationships. And so Jen and I are colleagues, but one of the things that we did early on is we set up one-on-ones where we just kind of connected. And I have another colleague where when I was starting, I just connected with them 15, 20 minutes with a coffee. It was nice over on Zoom. Share stories, learn background, personal connections. Exactly. You know, there are oftentimes you're much more connected than you think you are. You're much more similar than you are different. Ask questions, be curious. Exactly. Ask how our expertise can work together. Thank you so much. Exactly. Thank you. I'm going to close out my chat. So why now, when we think about all of the things that we just talked about, the experiences that faculty women of color are experiencing, why now? Well, there's a lot happening in the world, and I think we all can see that. There's heightened racial tensions and incidents of discrimination in society that creates a more challenging and potentially hostile working environment for faculty women of color. These women often face a unique form of discrimination known as gendered racism, where biases are based on both race and gender, that intersection. And this can result in specific challenges around stereotypes, expectations, and opportunities. The political climate can influence the visibility and representation of faculty women of color. And the political discourse and policies may impact diversity initiatives, hiring practices, and overall institutional support for underrepresented groups. And we're seeing that happen all over the country, and specifically in Florida. That's been a place where we are very publicly seeing the fallout of some policy implications. Changes in immigration policies and debates around immigration can affect faculty members who are immigrants and come from immigrant backgrounds. The uncertainties related to visas and residency status all create stress and challenges. All of this can take a toll on the mental health and well-being of faculty women of color, and the mere act of navigating these difficult conversations and experiences adds to their emotional labor. Why is this important? Because now more than ever, our classrooms need these broadened perspectives. Researchers say that diverse teams tend to be more creative, innovative, and that differing viewpoints leads to new and innovative ideas. Diverse teams also are more effective at problem solving, and they can add a different lens of solving complex issues like climate change and public health issues. Diverse perspectives contribute to more well-rounded, relevant, and impactful research. And it ensures that these studies are providing a broader lens. This leads to a greater competitiveness in the academic landscape and a richer learning experience for our students. So how does an institution tackle these big issues, meaning implementing initiatives around DEI? Well, first, they can focus on improved hiring practices that are free from bias and broaden the applicant pool by making sure they are reaching out to all different population groups. That means organizations, recruiting at historically Black colleges and universities, looking for really kind of mining for really good talent. Next, they can add mentorship programs that provide faculty women of color with support and guidance. I think it's telling that most of us don't really know what faculty mentorship programs are either in existence on campus, what that looks like, or if there's something available. So imagine being a first generation professor. You may not have any colleagues or connections with people who can explain the process to you. And I can tell you from the conversations I have had with the study participants, that in itself is one of the things that they often find themselves struggling with, which is this understanding of the path, the journey, what that looks like. What steps do they need to take? What training should they go to? What, additional credentials do they need? And they just don't understand even who to ask. Finally, institutions can add diversity training, including unconscious bias training. And unconscious bias is when and we all have heard that term over the last few years, but that, just in case you don't know what that is, unconscious bias explains the attitudes, beliefs, stereotypes that we unconsciously have, and they guide our actions and our decisions. And a lot of times people don't even realize that it's a part of their decision making. These biases are very dangerous to an institution's culture, and because they are so influential and impactful. Another thing institutions can do is to make sure all stakeholders can recognize and address things like microaggressions. To think the experiences faced by faculty women of color don't impact the academic environment or student success in higher education means that there is a missed opportunity to improve student success and retention. In fact, the experiences of faculty women of color contribute significantly to the overall campus climate. For example, when these women are underrepresented, it can create an environment where students from similar backgrounds struggle because they cannot find a relatable role model or mentor. And this lack of representation can lead to feelings of isolation and hinder a sense of belonging, which can negatively impact student success. When these faculty encounter stereotype threats, that's when you are being treated by a person's perceived stereotypes of your ethnic or racial group. That unconscious bias impacts their relationships with those students and colleagues. When these faculty members face challenges related to discrimination or lack of support, that creates a less inclusive environment for all students, which can hinder student success. And finally, the lack of support and representation can contribute to the lower retention and graduation rates for students from those underrepresented backgrounds. And these students face additional challenges that persist. These students face additional challenges in persisting through their academic programs. The challenges faced by faculty women of color can have a cascading effect on the entire academic environment and student success. So by addressing these, we create an inclusive, supportive environment that maximizes the potential for the success of all students. Now, I just asked you to do that in the chat, but now I want you to think about what I've shared with you and ask yourself, what is one thing that you can do to help a faculty woman of color not feel othered? I'm going to activate that right now. What can you do? It is now active. Go to the other side. Include in divisions. Ask questions. I wonder if that was include in decisions or ask questions, leadership roles, provide a pathway to leadership roles, ask questions. And you're going to see one of the comments that one of the participants said is this a safe place to have this conversation? Get to know them, ask about their research, be kind, inclusive, be intentional about learning about their experiences, and follow up. Yes. No one wants to feel like they're on, like you're just kind of reaching out just to ask questions and then not follow up with them or not invite them to be a part of your research projects. That's the other thing, bring them into, the writing projects you're doing, bring them into, believe them if they share experiences of microaggression. Yes. Oh, you're going to see that. Believe them in a future slide. Exactly. Thank you all for sharing. Yes. Oh, wait, it says see more. Let's see. Okay. Thank you all for sharing. Okay. So back. So how do we make these equity gains in higher education or to support faculty women of color and create that inclusive environment? Well, we've talked about some of them in that previous slide. One is providing transparent promotion and tenure processes. Where I work, we have a very clear pathway to getting tenure, well, not tenure, getting a promotion. There's a packet, there's a spreadsheet, there's a booklet. When I did some research around this and just Googling this process at other schools, I went to predominantly white institutions, HBCUs, online, and many of them do have very transparent processes, but making sure that people can find that information is very important. And then providing opportunities to have someone review your packet before you submit it, very important. Recognize the diverse scholarly contributions. You mentioned that before, bringing them into your research conversations, highlighting when they've been published in a journal, highlighting the work that they're doing, very important. Creating an inclusive department culture, making sure that the workload is equitable, where you're not just putting these women on every diversity committee and making them feel like they're putting in more emotional labor than others. And then addressing those, like someone said, when they say that they've experienced a microaggression, believe them. And so the next idea is that you can address that implicit and unconscious bias and those microaggressions, providing that family and parental support, those family-friendly policies. Many faculty women of color are dealing with that multi-generational household where they are caring for the generation in front of them and behind them. And so having those kinds of family-friendly policies is very important. Recognition of cultural competency. So, acknowledge the value that these women bring to the campus community. And then providing research funding resources, providing a pathway to leadership, and providing ongoing evaluation and accountability, giving them that positive reinforcement, but also sharing those helpful tips on how they can improve and move forward in their career. So those are some ways that faculty women of color you can make some equity gains in that. And the way that faculty women of color can contribute in their role in this is, being there, and asking for what they need and sharing their experiences and being the advocate and the activist and doing the research like I'm doing in my institution. This is something that I feel very strongly about. And I have met with our administrators and I have shared this, plan and it's been received with an open mind, and people are really interested and supportive of that. And I think sometimes we're afraid to do this kind of, localized, centralized research about a specific population, but you would be really surprised when you try to do it, who wraps their arms around you to support you in doing that. Using your voice in curriculum development, and then supporting mentoring and supporting those faculty around you. Those are some ways that you can also, as a woman as a faculty woman of color in these institutions, these are ways that you can add and kind of share your story as well. Because I wanted this to kind of be a reciprocal, kind of a balanced conversation, not just everything that somebody else has to do, but there's also some things that we can do. So I want to talk a little bit just about the historical context. So the faculty women of color have been in academia, but it's been a very complex kind of experience. In the early 1900s and in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, you had this influx of HBCUs, and they were vital to the education of African Americans in this country. And I actually went to Spelman College, and here you have a picture of some Spelman College students. This is one of the ways that we were able to make a headway into academia, is through those institutions. They provided a critical role in helping to provide educational opportunities for both men and women. And then you had people like Mary McLeod Bethune. She founded a college, and she's founded this school for Negro girls with $1.50, faith in God and 5 little girls. So that, and then you look at this legacy behind her, the focus, the intent, the drive to kind of be seen and to say, I'm here. You see it historically throughout that this process of how we found our space in academia. And that follows through with the civil rights movement and affirmative action. All of these were very key to making significant changes in higher education. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, that addressed some of the racial disparities in education. Affirmative action policies, that was one of the ways that equal opportunities were provided for underrepresented groups, including women of color in academia. And then you moved into the 1960s and 70s, where you had the whole feminist movement, and you had the rise in women's studies and ethnic studies. And all of those places provided spaces and opportunities for the discussion and study of gender, race, and ethnicity. And they give the voice that these women need and to the experiences that they were having in academia. And then we wrap up with where we are now, which is, yes, we've made progress, but there are still lots of challenges because we are still underrepresented. There's still lots of stereotyping, and there's still the lack of support. The activism and advocacy that was present, and there are now even more, those efforts are still needed, and there are now even more allies who are supporting this work. But those allies who created these ideas like critical race theory, guess what? Those frameworks that we have used to help explain and to make progress have now been weaponized and used to actually stop the progress that we were making. So that twist and that weaponization has impacted the experiences that faculty women of color are having. And so that means that women are still having these challenges. They're still having difficulties with bias and inequities in academia. Because the very theoretical frameworks that were created to kind of help explain the absence, the experiences of these women have been weaponized. And so understanding this historical context is crucial because it helps to understand the resilience of these women and the ongoing struggles that they have as they pursue careers in academia. But it also speaks to the importance of continued efforts needed to create that inclusive and equitable academic environment. So let's talk a little bit about the research that I've been doing. This quote is from Maya Angelou, and it summarizes exactly how the women I've met felt on this journey. From donut maker to college professor, won't take nothing for my journey now. I was amazed. One of the questions I asked is, what was your very first job? And they were just like, what? Why would you ask me that? But it was so important for me to understand like where you started and like where you ended and where you want to go, like where we were today, present, and what's your next steps. And just the journeys of these women. I can't wait to dive into it some more. But we had someone who was a donut maker. And I just thought, from donut maker to college professor, what story is that? And they all said the same thing, which is they would not change one thing about their journey. Now, it would have been nice not to have dealt with some of the challenges that they had, because it did create a bit of a curvy linear path. It wasn't always, a direct path to their role as a college professor, but their journey really informs how they interact in the classroom. And that value add is so important. So here's a little bit about the study. Each one reach one is the name of it. There are 23 faculty women of color. We have focus groups that we've just completed. We will have 2 professional development sessions. We're going to have one-on-one interviews, and then we will have an end of study survey. The journey. So when I was just talking to you about how from donut maker to college professor, the women described their journey to teaching in higher education is varied. It was indirect. It was very happenstance. It was unexpected. It was unplanned. And then someone said that it was thankful. Like she felt like being in academia was an opportunity for her to not only have the experience of gratitude, but to share that with others, because she has found her experience to be that enriching to her personally. And so when I asked them the question, what do they want their manager to know? Like, what do you want to know? What do you want them to know when they see you? And these are some of the quotes. When I show up, all of me shows up. Please don't second guess me. Trust me, believe in me, and I will get the job done. See me as the educator I am, and don't expect less of me. Those are some of the ideas behind how they come into the classroom, how they come into the workplace, and that's what they wanted their managers to know. And then when I asked them, why they wanted to engage in mentoring, because they wanted that dialogue with a colleague. They wanted to hear different experiences, perspectives. They wanted the freedom to explore with curiosity. They wanted to help in learning how to exceed expectations. I love that. They wanted guidance from someone with similar ambitions, and they wanted help understanding the career path. And they want their mentor to look like them. They want them to be someone who understands the journey and someone who is still working, someone who is direct and a good listener, and someone who is a woman. So what are some of the key strategies that we can use? We've talked about hiring practices, we've talked about policies, but let's talk specifically around using mentorship and sponsorship programs. I've often said that some of my best opportunities have come from having a sponsor, someone who believed in me. Providing safe spaces for open dialogue. One of the women said, is this really a safe space for me to talk? Like if you're asking me, am I going to be penalized for this? Creating inclusive policies, creating opportunities and time for them to grow and develop as academics, and then providing consistent professional development opportunities. So let's get into those AI tools. I wanted to share this work because it's so important. I was offered full rides to the top 3 social work programs in 1990. 2 of them based their decision on my race, and 1 based their decision on merit. I chose the one on merit because no one wants to be selected based on their identifiers, regardless of popular belief. And that's what I'm finding when I meet with these women, is that they want to be seen for the professionals they are and for the value add they give. So some of the AI tools that institutions can use, they can use AI hiring tools that are not that have unbiased algorithms that can be used for screening and evaluating job applications. They can create inclusive curriculum design by using AI. And if anyone was at that session earlier, it talked about how we can use AI to help with our curriculum development. And then we can also use faculty tools around mentorship and support for AI, mentorship and support AI tools. So there are some online mentoring tools that you can use. There are professional development tools, and then research and collaboration. And we're going to share a couple of those now. So using ResearchGate or academia can be a game changer for some faculty, but what about those who don't understand the benefits of the AI algorithms? So I signed up for both of these, and I found that Academia EDU found my articles for me. They then listed people that I should connect with. They provided a ranking. They told me how many people are citing my articles, and the same thing with ResearchGate. So these are 2 tools that faculty can use to help bridge those relationships across the country and across the world even. In addition, AI tools can help you with your citation patterns. They can help you with your Grammarly can help you with editing and with your writing. And there's lots of opportunities for you to understand how your writing is impacted by how your articles are published, and that can be sometimes impacted by your grammar and your writing. So that's important. Real quick, I know we're getting close to time. It's 11:10. So I want to share, these are 3 really good tools, and I have the QR codes here. JobScan, you can put your resume in, and it's so funny. My resume said, oh, you're 85%, these are the ways that you can improve. This is some language you should explain, or it gives you really good feedback. LinkedIn Career Explorer helps you understand what additional strategies and skills you can use to improve your opportunity to be promoted. And Imagine PhD, awesome repository of information and tools that postdoc and beyond students can use as well. And these are all free. And I'm going to ask you to just reflect on, I'm not going to do the poll, but reflect on who you can influence in your current role. I was going to have you do a waterfall activity where you put that into the chat, but I don't want to do that. I just want you to reflect on who can you influence in your current role to affect change for faculty women of color. So just think about that, and then ask yourself, I'm going to skip that one. And then ask yourself also, how can you leverage your position to support faculty women of color? What can you do from where you sit? I know that Jen Robinson has done an awesome job of connecting with other women and bringing them onto writing projects. What can you do in your position? So I want you to think about that. And then, I'm not going to do that one. Identify potential allies and collaborators to help you. So who can you get in your quote unquote posse to help you affect this change? So I want you to think about what you can do, who you can influence, and identify your posse or your allies and your collaborators. As I wrap up, I want to give you some steps for a call to action. I want you to identify where the support is needed. So how do you do that? Talk to the people we were talking about. So talk to your faculty women of color. Think about implementing mentorship programs, advocate for policy changes, host those workshops and seminars, that professional development to overall help people understand the path to leadership. Celebrate those diverse perspectives and achievements, provide resources for diversity training, encourage diversity in hiring and promotions. Those are ways that you can affect change in your 6 inches. Here are my references, and here is how you can get in touch with me. And I wanted to leave a few moments to answer any questions you may have. And I hope that you'll reach out if you would like in the future to continue the dialogue about this important research topic and project that is ongoing. So thank you very much.
Are there any questions or comments for Dr. Handy? Yes, I agree. I agree, Richard. It's so much information to take in, a lot to digest, and some great ideas for action plans as we move forward.
Okay, Linda says, I strongly believe that institutions need to stray away from meeting DEI through a statistic lens and more through a culture, exactly, in regard to hiring and staffing practices. I watched a TED Talk last week about going international, especially when online institutions. Good. I don't know I don't know about the recording, Carla. Yes, Linda, definitely a culture shift is what's important and necessary. And I think that when it's part of your culture, it becomes a part of what you do. And it's not something that you and who you are. And it's not something that it's not a checkbox that you are trying to say, we did this. It's just part of how you live. As we say, culture of care. Thank you, Harla. Yes, hiring practices is a big piece, Linda. Mm-hmm. Any questions? I know it was a lot of information. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's
I have a
fantastic
question,
information.
Teresa.
Yeah.
That's Linda. So, I mean, I know a lot of focus has been on DEI in the past couple of years, which is great. But in your position, have you seen, I've noticed a lot of institutions are saying, okay, we're focusing on DEI, and all the staff and all the faculty have them embedded in their goals. But I'm not seeing the actual action taking place. Like I've noticed a lot of when I'm going and doing research on other institutions, like their board members or their leadership roles are not as diverse and equitable as they should be after a couple of years on this huge. So what are you seeing in your role in ways where you can kind of push these CEOs and board members and leadership to really become diverse?
Right. So a couple of things. In different industries, you're seeing different movement. So in higher education, I think that there is some movement around accessibility to leadership roles. I've noticed if you follow the Chronicle of Higher Ed and other publications, you'll see these notes, oh, so-and-so has been promoted to this. However, there are so many requirements for these jobs that take years for faculty members and administrators to acquire those skills, that it's hard to just move people forward if they don't have those concrete skills. So some of it is we've got to play catch up because we didn't provide access for people to, have those early career opportunities to be an assistant dean or a program chair or whatever, to show evidence of their ability to serve in a leadership role, right? And so I think you see some headway being made in that regard, where people are saying, okay, we need to broaden how we are making hiring decisions and provide opportunities for more young early career professionals to make sure that they're on the path to become a dean, or on the path to becoming whatever it is, administratively they want to do.
That makes sense. I didn't think of it that way. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks. Yes, the recording will be shared. All right, well, it's 11:16, Jen.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Handy, for your presentation, and thank you to everyone who is attending. I am putting a conference evaluation form in the chat right now. You only need to fill out one for the conference. And thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the ADEIL conference.
Jen, did you announce who the random person was who won?
It was, yeah, well, I contacted her in the chat. It was Harla Frank.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, take care. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.